Today, we are going way back to 1989 to Soviet-era Volgograd for an absolutely chilling true crime story. I mean, this one has everything: love, a deep-seated grudge, and the wedding that ends, well, not with a honeymoon, but in an interrogation room.
So let's start with the most unforgettable image from this whole case. Picture this: a bride in her full white dress and her brand new husband being walked out of their own wedding reception by the police straight to the station. So, how on earth did they get to this point? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind a bit.
Okay, so the whole chain of events that leads to that absolutely wild arrest, it all kicks off about a month earlier with a really grim discovery out in a ravine just on the edge of the city.
So, some kids are playing, and they see this discarded rug. But it's not just a rug. When the police show up and unroll this soggy, dirty carpet, they find a woman's body inside. And it's obvious right away, this was no accident. This was a brutal, violent murder.
All right, so the victim is pretty quickly identified. Her name's Nina Livchenko. She's a local shopkeeper, but the crime scene, it's a total dead end. There are 0 fingerprints on the carpet, any other evidence, probably washed away by the melting snow. The only thing they find is a couple of stray cat hairs. Not much to go on, right? The police figure this probably wasn't a robbery, it feels personal. The killer was almost certainly someone she knew.
So naturally, the detectives go talk to Nina's daughter, Irina. And her story, it just immediately sets off all kinds of alarm bells. She tells them that right after her mom went missing, she was attacked by a mugger with a knife. Okay, but then she admits she never even reported it to the police. I mean, who does that? This incredibly passive reaction to such a violent event? It made her a person of interest, like, right away.
Okay, so the investigation into Nina's murder is starting to go cold. And then, bam! A second crime hits the city, and this one is even more brutal. And for a little while, the investigators are absolutely positive they found the connection they've been looking for.
Police get a call to an apartment. Inside, they find an older couple, the Klimovs, murdered. The scene is just a complete bloodbath. So of course the detectives start trying to connect the dots to any other recent violent crimes.
And why did they think there was a pattern? Get this. Between the two of them, the Klimovs had been stabbed 34 times. 34. That level of overkill, that sheer brutality, was just so similar to what happened to Nina Livchenko. The investigators felt it in their gut. They were onto something big here.
And then they find what looks like the smoking gun. They discover that years ago, Mrs. Klimov lived in the exact same apartment building as Nina Livchenko. So you've got the same savage method, and now a shared past address. The police were sold. They thought they were hunting for a serial killer who was targeting people from this one building.
It was a great theory. Compelling, right? Well, it was also completely wrong. When they actually dug into the Klimovs' lives, the real story was, well, it was tragic, but it had absolutely nothing to do with Nina Livchenko.
It turns out the Klimovs were killed by Mrs. Klimov's own 17-year-old son and his buddies. And the motive? It wasn't some grand, complicated scheme. It was a family argument that just spiraled out of control. Apparently, it all kicked off because his stepfather made fun of his new perm. Yeah, you heard that right. So, with that unbelievably bizarre case solved, the police realized they've been chasing a total red herring. The real answer to Nina's murder was hiding back at square one.
All right, so with that whole other case wrapped up, the investigators turned all their attention back to the one person who just didn't sit right with them from the very beginning: Nina's daughter, Irina. The one who was just weirdly calm about everything. So the police decide it's time. They're going to bring Irina in for a real, formal interrogation. But when they go looking for her, what they find is just surreal. She's not at home mourning. Oh no, she's at a restaurant called the White Stork, in the middle of her wedding reception. And this is just a little over a month after her own mother's body was discovered. So you have to imagine this scene. It's one of the weirdest things you could possibly witness. The police literally walk into the middle of this wedding party and arrest the bride and groom. People who were there said Irina, still in her wedding dress and veil, was just calm. Totally calm as they escorted her out of the restaurant and into a squad car. Okay, so back at the station, the happy couple gets separated. They're put in 2 different interrogation rooms. The police are thinking, okay, this is it. One of them is going to crack. But what they get instead are 2 completely different stories, and they absolutely do not match up. So the groom, Vlad, he's telling one story. He's like, I didn't kill anyone. I showed up and Irina had already killed her mom. They had a huge fight about the wedding. I helped her get rid of the body. But Irina, she tells a much, much darker story. She says Vlad attacked her, and when her mother tried to protect her, he killed her. And the motive? It wasn't about the wedding, she said. It was all about getting revenge for his cousin. Clearly, one of them is lying through their teeth.
And as the police keep pressing Irina, her story starts to unravel, and she finally reveals this dark secret from 8 years back, a secret that, it turns out, connects absolutely everyone in this mess and explains the whole twisted thing.
So here's the backstory. 8 years ago, when Irina was only 16, she was assaulted by this guy named Oleg. Her mom, Nina, she was tough. She insisted they reported, and Oleg got sent to prison for 8 years. Well, fast forward to 1989, Oleg gets out. And in this insane twist of fate, he finds out that his own cousin, Vlad, is now engaged to Irina. That mugging she talked about, that was Vlad's first attempt to get at her. The second and final attack was the one where her mother, Nina, stepped in to protect her and was killed for it.
So you see, this was never about some fight over a wedding. This was a family vendetta that had been simmering for 8 long years. Vlad murdered Nina to punish Irina for what he saw as an injustice to his family, to his cousin all those years ago.
So, after the trial, the court hands down the sentences. Vladislav Irmakov, the groom, guilty of murder. His buddy, Igor Solomon, who helped him get rid of the body, guilty. And Irina, the bride, also guilty, as an accessory for helping to cover the whole thing up.
Vlad, the actual killer, gets 15 years in a pretty harsh prison colony. But Irina and the accomplice, they each only get 2 years. So legally the case is closed. But if you ask me, the real mystery was only just getting started.
Because those sentences don't answer the one question that just hangs over this entire story. Why? Why would you marry the man who murdered your mother, right in front of you? I mean, what she did after the murder is, in some ways, just as shocking as the crime itself. You know, the experts and psychologists who looked at this case, they all came to a really chilling conclusion. They believe Irina had developed what you might call a psychology of extreme passivity. Think about it. Her whole life, from the first assault to her mom being the one to push for charges, to Vlad completely dominating her, she had fallen into this role of being a victim who never makes a decision. She just lets other people decide her fate. And in this case, the consequences were absolutely tragic.
So what happened to her? Well, Irina did eventually divorce Vlad while he was still locked up, and years later she got remarried and tried to move on, to build some kind of new life. But her story, man, it's just such a dark and powerful reminder of how trauma and fear, and just a lifetime of letting things happen to you, can build a prison that's way more confining than any jail cell. It really makes you wonder, what is the true cost of silence?